Can we not have the police banned? Serious?
We have effectively a de facto.
Boris is in favour of a police state.
Yes, he is. It's called the lockdown. With non-crime hate incidents, more and more people are being investigated, and their records. Fuck it, I'm getting confused. Sorry. Let's start again. There aren't any TV cameras here, are there? I'm trying to rehearse this a little bit. Daniel, how you doing?
Hello.
Hello.
Look, they've got a banner there. Look, they've got a banner there. You make me feel as if I'm speaking some kind of Arabian language. Sorry.
Yeah.
Hello, mate. How you doing?
How you doing? You alright?
Yeah, very good. Yourself?
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. You haven't even been to Speakers Corner for a while.
I've been for a while. I've been regular. It's just I had the last 2 weeks I haven't been, so I was travelling through. But
Okay. Anywhere nice?
yeah, I went to New York and then I had family. How are you? You alright?
Yes, very good. Very good.
So if you go to your right a bit, so you get the 100. Yeah, there we go. That's correct. And action.
So I'm here at Speakers Corner to celebrate the 150th anniversary of this marvellous British institution. It's a symbol of how important free speech is in this country, but it's a symbol that's under attack. Yesterday, Hatton Tash, an evangelical Christian preacher, was arrested by the Metropolitan Police. We don't know why. The Free Speech Union is going to be writing to the Met. It's not the first time it's happened. They should be protecting the right of people like her to speak and not arresting her and effectively shutting her up. But it isn't just Hyde Park Corner. It isn't just Speakers Corner that's under threat. Free speech is under greater threat today than at any time, I think, possibly in the last 150 years. We saw that with the Lady of Heaven. People weren't allowed to go and see, effectively, the Lady of Heaven. We now have a de facto blasphemy law in this country. We see it with the police recording non-crime hate incidents. The Sun has a story this morning saying that someone's been investigated for committing a non-crime hate incident because they called an 11-year-old boy short. It's completely ridiculous. We think about 250,000 non-crime hate incidents have been recorded in England and Wales alone since 2014. The Free Speech Union is doing what it can to try and get rid of that abhorrent, chilling restriction on free speech. And perhaps really critically, we've got the online safety bill currently winning its way through Parliament, and that is probably the greatest assault on free speech in a generation, so we really need to do what we can about that. But today is a day to celebrate free speech. We still have Speakers Corner. It's still a vitally important institution, literally and symbolically, and I think we should all at least take a breath today, in spite of all the assaults on free speech, to celebrate the fact that this marvellous place has effectively existed and has provided a platform for people from a huge range of different views to speak for 150 years. So happy birthday to Speakers Corner.
Yay! Birthday Speakers Corner.
Thank you.
Right, my turn.
Go on, Steve.
I was a member. I was paying £4.95 a month.
Okay, and you're a full member.
The problem is I didn't get any support from you guys. With what? On the anti-lockdown stuff. We've been arrested here, arrested here. I wrote a few times, no response whatsoever.
Well, we did actually go to bat.
Did we get to it?
Here's your main PC man.
It's up here. We have to control it.
Use close shots out loud.
That would explain it.
I took a post on it. Again. It's already on my platform for next week. Thank you.
How come you become so animated? You said that guy.
Called History of Psychiatric Treatment in our National Health Service.
You're going to give a speech today?
The very fact that unless they detract it, then that would still maintain the police would have to do whatever on a regular basis. And all they do is target us. They dig out people. I was arrested violently. I called them he said he had his brain was in his tummy, and then he beat him. They're really bad to beat him up just for being.
I was fined £80, so tell fucking Boris.
Did you pay the fine?
Yes, because I was prevented from leaving the country. The UK is a fascist state. Yeah, but look, the capitalist system is in crisis. Good news. God bless Karl Marx. I raised money for the NUM when I was in my mid-20s. It doesn't matter who gets elected. We either have a liar or a lawyer.
You cannot speak his corner.
Writing and complaining about what I was saying, and when I put something on, I put back just about this digest, and then I tried yesterday to get back on the radio.
Well, I mean, it's all we've got, isn't it? I've been doing too much.
YouTube channel. I mean, they literally censor us now.
Yeah.
We've got a live stream. It's very quick.
When I first came here,
Get up and the bang.
Must have been a heavy one. No, you're so pleased.
Oh yay! I must point out that musical instruments are actually not allowed in the Royal Palace. In case there are any police officers present. We've only got one ex-police officer. I do have to say that the Parks police were invited, but they said they were a little bit too busy today. Changing the guard. Oh yes! Sorry, I didn't see you. Never seen you without your uniform. Brilliant.
Undercover. And I'm a day off.
Now that's commitment. Oh, look at that photo. So, thank you all for coming, and thank you for Toby for coming particularly and representing the Free Speech Union, and maybe you'll come up and say a few more words. That'd be great.
Mothers Union.
The Mothers Union. I don't think they're here. So this is a really important day. I was speaking to a guy earlier and they're saying that specific points in history are often really significant, and I think we should never overlook them. And today, the 27th of June, is one of those days for Speakers Corner. I knew quite a few months ago that this year was the 150th anniversary of Speakers Corner, but I only realised a week and a half ago when Guy, it was actually, sent me a link to point out that the 27th of June was the very specific day that the Act came about. So the Act that first gave Speakers Corner legal protection as a place for assembly and for public speech was the Parks Regulation Act of 1872. So for the last 150 years, we have absolute legal protection to do what we're doing now.
And it lets even Nazis like you.
We don't.
There is always one. There is always one.
Just how brilliant the UK is.
Bless him, bless him.
I shall continue. I shall continue.
Nazis have a speech.
And you know the wonderful thing about free speech is it doesn't matter how mad you are, you still have the right.
We still let you speak here in the UK.
Whatever nonsense, whatever lies, whatever bullshit you want to come out with, come to Speakers Corner and you have a home.
Absolutely. It's upset. It's been hacked.
So, anyway.
That's embarrassing.
Shall we talk about the history of Speakers Corner? The history of Speakers Corner. This was as I said last night, for those of you that were watching, it's got quite a dark history. This place started as a place of execution. It was where we killed our criminals. It's where we hung our criminals on the Tyburn tree, which was a massive, massive set of gallows where up to 24 people were hung at once, and those people were given their last opportunity to give a speech. When those executions were brought to a close, that practice continued, and it's now continued to this day, and may it long continue. And I hope the next 150 years is as important as the previous 150 years. Anyone can turn up here on a Sunday with a ladder, without a ladder, and they can spout whatever they choose. Whatever they choose. If they think the earth is flat, then they may come here and tell us the earth is flat. You might notice there was chalk all over the Speaker's Corner because the flat earthers returned yesterday. So welcome return to the flat earthers. But over the years, we've had a real diversity of speakers here, be it vegans, be it politics, be it comedy, be it flat earthers. The one thing that has happened, the one thing that has happened in recent years, which in my view is unfortunate, is that religion has taken over.
Shush now, darling.
Religion
He's right.
Welcome, Steve, as I make that point. Religion has indeed taken over, and it's a little bit, don't take this the wrong way, but it's a little bit bipolar in terms of evangelical Christianity versus quite a fundamentalist example of Islam here. So I plead to you all, if this is your first time that you come to Speaker's Corner, don't make it your last time. Come back, invite your friends, invite your families. We need more speakers, we need more diversity of speakers, and it helps drown out the nutters. It really does.
Professional heckler this park. He's talking about diversity.
No one cares.
So, we have some great people here today.
And him. Sorry.
Keep going, Steve. Keep going.
We have some great speakers, so I invite anyone to the platform that wishes to say some words. I want to emphasise today is a celebration, as Toby pointed out earlier. It is a tremendous day, but it does come with a bit of a shadow of what happened here yesterday, and we can't avoid talking about that as well. But it shouldn't remove the point that this is a celebration of a very important place. Steve, who I think hopefully is going to say a few words, once described this place as the jewel in the free speech crown of this country, and I thought that was a spot-on description. So I'm sure he's going to tell us more.
Make way.
So I think good point, Pablo. I think make way for XPC Steve.
And he doesn't even need a ladder. Look at that.
Was that haircut banned in the police force?
I didn't hear it.
It was too good for them.
I've always wanted to grow one before I lose it.
Wow. Boring.
I'm not an orator. I'm not a speaker as such. Those that know me, and I can see what lots of wonderful faces here. Lovely to see you all again since my retirement, unfortunately due to ill health. Although thankfully I'm on the mend now, so which is good. Where do we begin? I don't want to waffle on. 150 years, Speaker's Corner, freedom of speech. Is freedom of speech alive?
Yes.
Ish.
Alive but sick. Very sick.
Do we have our freedom to have our speech?
Low.
To an extent.
You gotta force it.
There's a great line in an Eagles song, Hotel California, we are prisoners of our own device. And we very much are. And when I first came to Speaker's Corner, I think it was about 2015, it was about that time.
150 years ago.
Yes, definitely. I came here from Borough and I came out to Hyde Park. I thought I was coming out to grass, taking it nice and easy, and then I took on the mantle of Speaker's Corner. I thought, no!
Did it very well.
Of course.
But what was very noticeable when I first started, it was at that time before social media and YouTube started to take off. So it was a time when you'd come on a Sunday and you'd have some of the stalwarts that'd be here on the various parts, speaking their truth and their opinions about bits and pieces. And then YouTube started to take over, and you can start to see this change when egos and channels started to take over and the narrative was changing. And I said, as it progressed, so for about a year, and I think I said at the first meeting that I arranged about the first time in history that we got a representation of all speakers from all faiths and ideals with the Royal Parks, myself as a police, and we had meetings quarterly over the old police house, and we made history there because we started to see these changes in our freedom of speech. We're starting to get more violence, driven by largely social media. And I said, whether you agree with me or not, social media is the cancer of freedom of speech. It robs you of responsibility. Now the reason why I say that is, if you're going to put something out on social media, do you have the guts to come down who you are, to stand on a soapbox and say that to the public?
That's true. That's true.
Sorry.
Do you?
Yeah.
Yeah, true. So if you can't do that, whatever you put out there, which may be legitimate, it's not getting out to the public. And Speaker's Corner is about listening. It should also be Listener's Corner, Debating Corner, and we've lost that.
Yeah.
We have lost the originals of why this was running. We need the original characters back. Derek, wonderful what you've been doing.
Yeah.
Absolutely wonderful.
I see three.
How we work today, we've got the sit down circle because it drives a low narrative, it causes proper debate. I see three. Brilliant.
I see three.
Yeah? And this is what we've done as a collaborative. We've got the signs up about the history. And then I've got the Royal Parks to make up some proper Speaker's Corner boxes.
Oh, good.
To drive.
What happened to them?
It's important because the so-called terrorist
Supposed to turn up today, but it couldn't.
years ago,
Keep going, Steve.
when I first came here in '92, there were boxes everywhere.
Yeah.
And because of the so-called terrorist threat,
Yeah.
the rubbish police got rid of them.
Yeah.
Not you.
No.
Oh, they're coming for you, Steve. Watch out.
Watch your back.
No one likes a traitor.
So
Here they are. Speak of the devil.
But
Have
Is it
Jesus in your
time
life.
already?
we had,
When I came here in
we
'92,
had
there
put out
was a box there,
on the side,
a box
stand up
there.
to something with a drive to try and get new people to come to the corner. And I worked with Westminster Council. We went to local universities and colleges to try and get a new breed of speakers coming in here. But unfortunately, it was very difficult because what they see on social media is all the fighting and all the hate. And it scares people off. And it became a nightmare to contain. But thankfully, during my time, we worked together. We managed to identify the troublemakers, and we dealt with them. And we reduced crime and incident by 85%
Go on, Steve.
during that time.
Well done.
So that's what we've done. Yep. And that's what we've done.
What happened?
Yeah. But sadly, we now live in a world where the way I can describe it is we live in a stadium. Imagine Wembley Stadium. Everybody's shouting and screaming their truths of what their opinion is. No one's listening anymore. And this is where we have got a mess. Now, is Speaker's Corner going to be here in 150 years' time? The place will, this spot, this land. Will the people still be coming here? That's down to the people. Unless we start getting people coming down here, the new generation, that get on their soapboxes to actually start talking about other subjects than religion, which has its place.
But religion is always the problem, Mr. Speaker.
Oh.
It's always the problem.
Contentious?
I'll get up on the ladder soon.
Tea break, everyone.
Religion and power has been since year dot, because that's what humankind does.
Yeah.
Almost as if there's a God.
You can't change that. But if we're going to celebrate this, you know, we've got to. This is imperative. We've got to get the new speakers down here.
Otherwise, it's going to get worse.
As
Can it?
what was it? What was Bob used to say?
Oh, it can always get worse.
He was right.
He was right. Of course, he was right.
Yeah. So we need more people coming down with a billboard saying this, or it could only get better. maybe.
Yeah, that's what I used to say to him. Different generation.
What else was I going to say? I'm waffling here.
I love way road. Extension.
Right, policing Speakers Corner itself.
That's it.
Extremely difficult.
Yeah.
I cannot tell you, and it actually made me quite ill. I mean, I did actually suffer serious anxiety from it because it's coming on a Monday, and if you saw the grief and the shite I had to wade through, and you think, my God, these are adults I'm dealing with here. 99% of it I just writ off. And as we know with the Redmond Bates ruling is, if you don't like it,
Go home.
don't be here. But policing is difficult.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I've tried during my time here to do training packages about the history, to introduce people, officers to work with the crowd. Simon, who's taken over me, is doing a sterling job, but his hands are tied. It's difficult to get police officers to come and get out their cars, to actually talk to people, and not go get that camera out my face. No? But policing reflects our society. It's easy to go and poo-poo the police are this. No, the police are you. They're everybody. This generation coming through is the same generation that's been brainwashed again by social media, driven by that stadium of hate. So that's difficult. And then we get a situation, unfortunately, we've seen yesterday with Hattoon. I mean, I don't know the full details. I question where was the Royal Parks Police here to work with the serials that are on duty here for the concerts, to give a bit of knowledge of how Speakers Corner works. I question that. I don't know. Why wasn't the crowd dealt with in a different way? Questions need to be asked. Why was Hattoon arrested in the first place? I don't know these facts yet, but we need to question this. We've got to challenge it, because if we don't, it becomes a narrative again.
Absolutely.
Yeah?
It becomes the norm.
It becomes the norm. So, I think that's all I really need to say, really. I'm going to say quickly my piece now. My little bit on the soapbox. Those that you know, I worked kind of closely with XR because I'm a druid and I work. My passion is the protection of the environment. And we do have a serious problem. The naysayers saying it's all a climate conspiracy and rubbish. This. The issue that we got, the narrative is the wrong heading. It's an environmental emergency. We are destroying our ecosystem.
That's fair.
Where's Piers?
That is the problem. If you cut down rainforests, and you plough up fields, and you just keep don't do crop circle rotations.
Circle rotations.
The poisons go into the waters and the rivers. Did you know that all our rivers are now classed, you cannot swim them because of the poisons in them? We have lost 80% of our amphibians because of all the poisons we're putting into our rivers. Even now there's a great big iceberg of wet wipes in the Thames which people are putting down there, and all that microplastics is getting into our water system, which is inside you. Yeah, that's inside you. Yeah, and all the chemicals in our food and the plastics and everything. We wonder why cancer is increasing, because you're consuming it.
By design.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
By plan. This company is profiting from it.
And when I say to
climate change
are
is
you
causing cancer?
Who's patriots? Who's a
Are you saying
patriot
climate
here?
change is causing cancer?
Who's a patriot here? What are you a patriot for? I'm a patriot for.
Because this is my country, and I wouldn't want to live anywhere else unless it was very nice.
Yeah. You question some of these so-called patriots. Yeah. Our land, our green land, and our forests,
Green and pleasant
and our waters, and our rivers, and our air.
Yeah.
75% of our bird life now is on the red list. You can go out and ask anybody in the high street here. Can anybody here name 10 garden birds?
I'd have a go.
Do pigeons
Wren, robin, starling, blue-tit, gold-tit, thrush, speckled something.
Blonde, brunette, redhead.
They're going.
Blonde, brunette,
We've got
redhead,
the lowest diversity
greyhead.
of wildlife anywhere in the whole of the northern hemisphere.
There are
now.
a few dinosaurs left. They're in the House of Lords.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to get at is we need more people coming down here, Speakers Corner, and start talking about this. Unfortunately, certain areas of media and certain groups and individuals twist it that it's all a conspiracy, it's climate change, nothing. It's real. I've just come back from visiting family in South Africa for 4 weeks. The winelands down there are in massive trouble. And I said to my family down there, there's no insects.
Yeah,
you know,
that's
see,
right.
And I've noticed
bushes
the
are here.
flowers don't smell anymore.
They don't.
When I was a boy in Leicester, you could smell the
And I said, where's all the
fragrance.
insects gone? I
Because
spoke
he
to the wine
going.
rows because
You must have COVID. You must have COVID. You can't smell or taste.
COVID's a
Yeah,
fake
and they're,
disease.
and they're trying to get beehives running again, and all collapsing. And what's happening now? The northern areas in Africa, are coming down south as well as north.
Yeah.
To try and get work because their crops are fading. And what's happening now is you're getting wars in the community. People are getting murdered by the dozen every single day in South Africa because of climate change.
Steve, I'll tell you something. And I thought I would come here today with you being up there, and I could heckle you, but I can't because I'm going to agree with you. Okay? The issue is that I spent about 5-6 years ago, I went to the Maldives, and I went 2 or 3 years to a specific island on the Maldives. And that island is now sunk.
How high was that?
And over the years, every year we went, the beach that we used to stand on, there was less beach for the waters coming up. And now they've had to remove the resort and the island has sunk.
Is that a modern phenomenon?
And round the corner to this island is what they call Rubbish Island.
Yep.
And you've never seen anything like it. They're burning rubbish on these islands.
So that's it. And just to finalise, I'm waffling on here.
No, you're not. Doing brilliantly.
Keep going.
We got a bit
What's the most precious resource we have on the planet?
Human beings.
What's the most precious resource?
I just answered you. Human beings.
Water. Yeah. We have virtually the southeast of England. A good friend of mine, she works in one of the main 3 water companies. Southeast England yesterday have now declared the southeast aquifers are empty. We have run out of water.
No, we haven't.
We have run out of fresh water. Once those aquifers drain, they don't fill up.
Under Thatcher that privatised water, and he works for the Jews Rothschild.
As we've got an energy crisis, they're all coming out now about let's get some fracking because we've got all the gas and everything underneath our feet. How much water do you think you need for one well to frack with? One well. Any idea? This is what they don't tell you. One well is the same daily water supply of the whole of New York State. One well. And once that water has been used, because they millions and millions of gallons, and they mix with sand, blast it through. No, it's mixed with lots of carcinogenic chemicals called slick fluid, so it gets into the crack and the fissures to pull out the gas. Once that water's pulled out, you cannot recycle it again. That's it, it's gone. So then they inject it back underneath the ground, 2,000 kilometres down under the ground, where it's below the aquifers, seal up the casing, and there it stays.
Tell us more how climate change is causing cancer.
One second.
Tell us more how climate change is causing cancer.
There comes a clincher.
That's what he said.
What happens to the concrete casings as concrete deteriorates over time, and that concrete and all that water and stuff seeps into the aquifers. Now it's only now in the United States this problem's starting to rise, because once that fluid gets into the aquifer water supply, that's it.
It turns the frog's gate.
That's it. Your water is gone.
Yes, it's
the company that Quadrilla, British company, only owns 8% of the shares. It's an Australian company, so we ain't going to see a bit of money if they did it. All goes back to Australia, into their coffers. Look what they're doing to their country.
The rich getting richer.
Yeah.
So we should have carried on hanging them instead of transporting them.
But there I am, because I'm waffling on about my truth. Yeah.
But your truth is brilliant, and thank you.
What a nice guy.
wonderful to be here. Long live Speakers Corner, but as I said, it's all down to everybody here to carry on speaking their truth and, most important, listening whilst heckling. Love you lots.
Fantastic. That's right. Fantastic. Thank you, Steve. We miss you. So we've got 2 special guest speakers that are going to come up next. But after that, it's free house. So and anyone that chooses to, I'm not going to be here for I'll be here for a second. So our first speaker is a former member of the London Assembly, the founder of the New Culture Forum, and a friend to free speech. So let me introduce you to Peter Whittle.
It's your first time speaking here.
Oh, right, first time, yes.
Not the last time.
No?
How does this go?
We don't know that yet.
There we go. On behalf of the New Culture Forum, I wanted to come today and to congratulate Steve on organising this great event. I don't know about you, but I think that as an emblem of free speech, Speakers Corner is of the utmost importance to all of our country, everyone in our country. And the fact is, we used to have a saying called "It's a free country." You used to hear it an awful lot. Strangely enough, you don't hear it very much now. And I think that reflects reality. At the time where Speakers Corner is now celebrating 150 years, what do we have? We have we have a teacher in hiding up in Yorkshire for what he said, some exercising his free speech as a teacher. We've just recently had a film taken down by View Cineworld, because of mob rule, basically, not upholding free speech.
Bring back the Lord Chamberlain.
But
Julian Assange.
But I would say this to you, that these things have been going on now for quite some years, these incidents. But the most important thing, I think, is that teachers in our schools should bring their pupils to this place to explain to them the importance of it, because we are now in a situation where there are many young people who don't even believe in free speech anymore. This is a new development. In the past, many of us...
education.
Yeah, many of us in the past used to argue about free speech, and it was quite easy because you had the free speech absolutists and you had people saying, oh yes, I agree with it, but you know, it's got limitations. Now we're having to argue with people who don't even believe in the concept. And unfortunately,
Like
that is many
don't understand the concept.
They haven't been taught
the government agents of the COVID dictatorship.
It is incredibly important, therefore, that our teachers, if that's possible, bring kids to this place, and that we have to make sure that the younger generation actually realise that free speech is the very basis of the society in which they live. So that's all I'm going to say. Thank you very much, Steve Faulkner, and thank you for inviting me along. Great event. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. So now over to Toby Young, who I know said a few words earlier, but I'm determined to get him up on the ladder as well. So Toby Young.
Just attaching them.
Going a bit.
You're right. Need some help.
Just I'll let that. Hold on. That's great. Just trying to press any of those buttons on the side.
Yes, no problem. So, thank you, Steve, and it's great to see all these faces here. When I was thinking last night about what I was going to say today, Steve invited me last week, I came across a video of Hatun Tash being dragged away from here by the police yesterday.
People corrupt videos.
When all she was doing was exercising her lawful right to free speech. And the Free Speech Union has written to the Metropolitan Police about arresting Hatun on a previous occasion. We've written to them about why they haven't yet made an arrest, because someone actually stabbed her when she was trying to exercise her lawful right to free speech last year here at Speakers Corner. And apparently, I've spoken to Hatun, she's here today. She said that one of the things the police said to her by way of explanation for why they had dragged her away yesterday, arrested her, even though charges haven't been pressed, that's usually the modus operandi, is that some of the people in the park yesterday thought that her t-shirt, which depicted one of the Charlie Hebdo cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad, was offensive. That was part of the explanation. So I thought, I mean, I thought it might be worth reminding everyone.
Stabbed in the face is offensive.
It might be worth reminding everyone of the words. I think the well-known words that the judge said in the famous Redmond Bate v. Department for Public Prosecutions case, which is, and I quote, "Free speech includes not only the inoffensive, but the irritating, the contentious, the eccentric, the heretical, the unwelcome and the provocative, provided it does not tend to provoke violence. Freedom only to speak inoffensively is not worth having," and that's something we should remember. But I wanted to follow up on something Peter said, which is he's absolutely right. Young people aren't nearly as passionate about free speech as they should be. They don't realise why it should be important to them and not just us. And one of the reasons, I think, underpins the reason why Hatun Tash was arrested yesterday. This view that if you allow too much free speech, it endangers historically disadvantaged, vulnerable groups. That there's a direct conflict between the right to free speech and the safety, the emotional well-being of historically disadvantaged groups. This, I think, is why young people are suspicious about free speech. They think it's only something that benefits the privileged, the elite, male, pale and stale conservatives, not historically oppressed, vulnerable, disadvantaged groups. And I just wanted to address what I think is a huge canard. That's just not true. It's historically ignorant. The reason the suffragettes were able to fight for votes for women was because of free speech. The reason the Chartists were able to organise and fight for votes for working men was because they were exercising their free speech. The reason the gay rights movement in the 1970s in America was able to get off the ground was because of their First Amendment rights. The reason for the civil rights movement, without the First Amendment protections in America defended by the American Civil Liberties Union, the civil rights movement wouldn't have been able to organise, to march, to protest. That's why the leaders of the civil rights movements, including Martin Luther King, were such passionate defenders of free speech. Free speech has been essential for the success of anti-colonial movements in India and South Africa. That's why Gandhi and Nelson Mandela were such passionate defenders of free speech. The idea that free speech is in any way the enemy of historically disadvantaged, oppressed people is the complete opposite of the truth. Without free speech, tons of people wouldn't have the rights they have today. Yes, those rights are under threat. Yes, we need to do more to defend them. Free speech has probably never been in greater jeopardy. But we need to nail this canard that free speech is in some way the enemy of oppressed people, that vulnerable people need to be protected from hurty words. That is nonsense. Free speech is the friend of the disadvantaged. Free speech and social justice go hand in hand. They're not in any way.
He's allowed to say what he likes. There's freedom of speech, my darling.
Thank you for coming, and it's great to be here. And I look forward to hearing what all you have to say.
Who's next, Steve? Who's next? Barry on.
What about the questions?
Mr. Young.
Mr.
Young.
No, these are speeches.
Mr. Young.
No, you're not allowing
Who wants him to answer questions?
Questions, Mr. Young, questions.
Mr. Young.
Questions, Mr. Young.
Can I ask, why are you kicking journalists out of your so-called free speech union?
Do you want to speak elsewhere? We're going to interrupt. It's a sister to speak.
I'm happy to speak elsewhere. Do you want to speak for a second?
Go on.
Right. Go on. Everybody, thank you very much. Some of you might have known who are regulars here. Many regulars here?
Oh, that's nice.
Who else? Yeah, of course.
Not that lady.
Well, some of you might have known my father, who used to be here as a regular. His name was Barry Roberts.
Yeah, good old Barry.
And he used to be here for about 30 years. Now, I'm his son. I'm not as good as him, obviously. He was trained in the noble art of speaking at SpeakersCorner. Well, you see, it's quite funny.
Nor are you, mate.
Anyway, so I'm just going to say a few things on the subject of free speech and just maybe sort of implicitly criticise the two speakers who spoke before.
Shots
fired. Now, there's free speech and there's free speech.
And there's free speech.
Thank you, sir. Yes. Speakers Corner in many respects, has never been a place for free speech, in the sense that the 1872 Act does not mention free speech.
Yeah, true.
It mentions something else called public address. Okay, so weirdly, Speaker's Corner is known symbolically as a place for free speech, but free speech does not exist here legally.
Maybe £10 a speech.
Now, if
Tell
you
everyone.
£10 a speech, anyone?
But what's interesting about the history of free speech is how the authorities have tried to heavily regulate ordinary people's voices here. So go back to 1866 when the Reform League had a riot here. They took down Hyde Park railings to try and get greater political rights for speakers here, for ordinary people. Now at the time the Home Secretary was called Spencer Walpole, Horatio Walpole. After the 1866 riots, he then went to the Attorney General and said, how can we stop people campaigning for their rights here? And the Attorney General said, well, it's within your powers to stop people coming here because they're trespassing on the Crown lands. But the Attorney General said, don't do that because that will inflame the excitable passions of people. Now in 1872, because more and more people campaigned for their right to free speech here, the government wanted not to pass a law to allow people the right of free speech, but the right of public address. And there was a debate in Parliament at the time. More liberal MPs said, well, what the hell is public address? That's not free speech. And the way the government had framed public address, they were going to empower the park rangers to decide who would have the right of free speech or not. And there was a big debate in Parliament at the time. Now, since 1872, the government has, on different occasions, tried to regulate Speaker's Corner in various ways, shapes and form, even today. But the other thing that has occurred here is the different architectural design of Speaker's Corner. So, for example, Marble Arch used to be the grand entrance to Speaker's Corner. In 1908, there's a roadworks that separated Marble Arch. Then in 1961 to 62, there are further roadworks that pushed Marble Arch even further away, but increased the traffic noise round here. And speakers at the time, including Lord Soper, who used to come here, complained that the noise would mean that it would be less chance for people to exercise.
He was going a bit later on.
Yeah, thank you, sir. That would regulate how people spoke, the increased noise pollution. And in fact, in 1996, when the Royal Parks Agency, 1994, when the Royal Parks Agency did a review of the area, they said the increased noise pollution has meant that there's less speakers in this vicinity here. So the speakers in 1961 were correct. So my point being, you will hear a lot of people say this is a place to celebrate for free speech, but historically the authorities have always regulated people's voices here. And legally, people don't have the right to free speech. The most they have is public address.
Well said.
Okay, so there you go. Yeah.
Do you remember your father's old joke?
I remember all of his old jokes,
Do you like sex and travel?
I don't remember that one, no.
Okay, how do we decide? You want to do rock, paper, scissors?
Free fall, isn't it?
All right. Yeah.
You know. I've got a catch
Okay, thank you.
Steve Barnes spoke about the ecology of command.
Hey man, Steve is the one in command here, isn't it? And speaking of command, I think there's something that is being missed right now. There's a very big issue that people are missing, and that's very unfortunate, because there's been some good points made right now, and there's one point that hasn't been made, is that police is not policing. The police is not doing their job. The police is not looking to put the criminals in jail. Instead, they're looking to put the victims in jail. They're jailing the victims, they're jailing the speakers, instead of jailing the people who attacked them. I don't remember the police chasing the person who stabbed Hatun. I don't remember them chasing the person who stole Hatun's Quran, which was her property.
When I was robbed here in the summer, I went to the police and they couldn't be bothered.
Thank you very much. I do remember, however, a policeman chasing me from the park during COVID. The one and only time that I was chased by a policeman in my life. I've never done any crimes. Never. Didn't steal, didn't hit, didn't do anything. The only thing I did was show up in the park. The policeman chased me all the way until the end of the road over there. All the way. 100 meters run. He chased me properly.
9 seconds.
Not when Hatun got stabbed, not when Hatun got robbed in the park. This is what I need to talk about here. This is what we need to focus on. The police is not doing anything. And I know why that is. We all know why that is. Because they expect that if they just jail the person who's provoking, who's being provocative, who's speaking about the things that get some people really upset, if they just remove that person, it's all going to be okay. There's going to be peace. Peace is going to be established. No breaches of peace, correct? Well, no. I tell you what, you're only encouraging the people, the scumbags who steal and who shank people. You're only going to be encouraging them to do the same over and over again. Because they feel unapologetic these days. They feel like they can get away with it. And more scumbags are showing up in Speaker's Corner and lying, cheating, deceiving, stealing and hitting people. It's almost on a daily basis. Every single Sunday in Speaker's Corner, something happens. Somebody gets hit. Somebody gets robbed. Somebody gets pushed around. It can't go on. It cannot keep going on. We need people like PC Barnes to come back to Speaker's Corner and to re-establish order, as they should have. And stop policing free speech. Thank you very much. I've had my speech.
He's retired, unfortunately. What can you do, man?
So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to point out that in the West we achieved something that no other civilization has managed to achieve, and that is the peaceful transition of government from one party to another without the necessary use of arms. Democracy is completely undervalued in the West. We've lost sight of the achievement of what democracy means.
Lie, Mr. Speaker.
In so many other parts of the world, changes of government and changes of policy are brought about through the use of force. And free speech is the fertilizer that allows democracy to grow. If you censor speech, if you limit speech, then what you do is you start to bring in the fence around the garden of democracy, and you narrow it and narrow it and narrow it until only one type of flower grows. We've lost the public debate in this country around free speech because we're not fighting for it. We're not arguing for it. And because we have ignored the enemies of free speech, cultural communists, Islamists,
religious fundamentalists,
like
Bob, the destroyer here,
who are not playing by the rules that they asked you to play by. So they do discriminate and they do practice prejudice and bigotry against groups that they don't like.
The Bible's full of
ladies and gentlemen. And because those of us that believe in free speech and believe in the traditional way of doing things are playing by a rule book that our opponents are not playing by, institution by institution is being politicized by militants of the left. Now, ladies and gentlemen, What can we do about it?
Nothing, Mr. Speaker.
What can we do about it? We can reinvigorate the arguments for free speech. We can reinvigorate the culture of free speech. How? By arguing for an American-style free speech law. Speaker's Corner shouldn't be described as a jewel of free speech because a special place here.
But it is, Mr. Speaker.
What we have, ladies and gentlemen, is an absence of militancy from those who want to see free speech, an absence of strategy, an absence of ability to speak out. So what can we do? We can organise politically, we can organise culturally. You can take Speaker's Corner to all the other Speaker's Corners that exist in the United Kingdom. There's Speaker's Corners in Bristol. There's Speaker's Corners in Sheffield. Free speech, if it is simply undefended, will continue to be eroded.
In the lockdown, you didn't come.
You've got to defend it. And you've got to defend it not just by talking about it, but through political activism. The police in the corner. I'm nearly finished. The police in the corner are following the easy road, the path of least resistance. They could follow a strategy of regularly reviewing the videos that are filmed at Speaker's Corner, identifying the troublemakers, and then using their powers to ban troublemakers from the park. It was a policy that was followed by Steve, it worked, and it can be followed again.
The police are incompetent!
And it should be mentioned that all of the examples where free speech have been eroded have two common groups associated with them. The teacher up north, the cinema, and what happened to Hatton Tash. The common factor in all of those was Islamic militancy. And the common factor in the erosion and the cowering to Islamic militancy and the justification and defence of it is the militant left. And what do we need to stand up against these two groups? We need a muscular Christianity. We need a stronger Christianity that will oppose these groups.
Jesus is dead.
Because if you don't, the only group that will stand against them is the alt-right, and the alt-right cannot be given the place to stand against these militant Islamics, militant Muslims, and militant Jews. Because if you surrender the debate to these two groups, there will be no guidance to virtue. Any questions?
No, thanks.
I'll be over there.
Next speaker. He wants to go next. I want to go.
I'll be over there for questions.
It's his turn, yeah, it's his turn.
We won't be.
Don't be too long.
As long as you like, Mr. Corbyn.
Listen on strike.
As long as you like, just for this man here.
Is this the right height? That's going to be one down. Careful with that.
Is that Corbyn?
Hello.
Goodbye, goodbye.
Where do I hold it?
Jeremy Corbyn.
Personally, not personally. Is that enough? Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Well, it's fantastic to be here. 150 years of Speakers Corner, and I welcome everybody here, including those who failed to turn up and support us on the day when we were attacked at the start of lockdown here, because the lockdown was attempting to end free speech, and those small numbers of us who stood up then and spoke here and defied the police and defied the lockdowns are probably the reason why we're still here now, able to speak. But I welcome all of those who weren't here then and are now, because we have to unite in the future to defend all free speech, because that is the mechanism by which the working class can defend itself and organise and defeat the enemy now and every time in the past. Now, most of you know me as my brother's brother. That used to be the case.
Sounds like a song.
Maybe I'm now his brother, but that might change and he'll be my brother.
The holy JC.
Unfortunately,
The real Jesus
as you
Christ
know,
is
he's
Jeremy
lost his
Corbyn.
way completely, and
Where's
is
the Christians to
now
get him?
an alliance with Extinction Rebellion and Just Stop Oil
Blasphemy.
to campaign a big oil psyop, the mentally deficient Just Stop Oil campaign. He's with them now, alongside Tony Blair.
Can I go next, Steve?
Tony Blair,
Can I go
Keir
next?
Starmer,
It's this
and
lady.
all
Oh, that
the
lady
worst
did after.
people in the world behind the World Economic Forum. And I challenge my brother to a debate in Speakers Corner.
He's independent, Mr. Speaker.
He's called his own brother.
Citizens, I first came here in 1965, when there was no such thing as a mobile phone, there was no colour television, there was no colour photographs. It was a bubble house. It was a bubble house, but what happened here then was very important, and I give total praise and support to all those people that have maintained this tradition since then. And I want to thank especially Haiku Koo here, who has always steadfastly,
Oh no, down to
apart from being
communism,
a
man.
brilliant orator, quality which is lost on modern politicians. He's a brilliant orator, but actually listens to debate and actually argues and actually changes his mind when he sees something wrong, which is unlike all politicians in Parliament at present.
Do you support the strikers?
Yes.
I thought you did.
Yes. Now, we don't want to talk for long, but the talk of climate lockdown is happening in France, because they say when it's too hot, everyone has to stay at home. Well, I say they should just take to the streets and cool down in the water cannons. And if we have a climate lockdown here, which will come on the back of my brother's propaganda, they'll claim it's too hot, I say take to the beach. If we have a climate lockdown in the UK, take to the beach. Take to the beach. Take to the beach. Take to the beach. And I repeat, it's with great sadness I note what my brother has done, and I challenge him to the debate. And I just want to say one thing at the end. This is now a summer of discontent for the great struggle against the World Economic Forum, which wants to impose a new world government, and it's doing it by stealth.
Already here, Mr. Speaker. It's called the United Nations.
World Health Organisation, which is actually an arm of world government in waiting. That is what it is. And we have to leave the WHO and in fact smash the World Economic Forum. The World Economic Forum must be destroyed. And specifically, this summer we've got to break this propaganda movement, which is the basis of the religion of the World Economic Forum, namely the climate con. So we've got this campaign to march for CO2. And on July the 23rd, XR will be marching against CO2. We'll be here marching for CO2. We've got to break them and break the fake Labour servile left, along with Starmer, and all of them break the ULEZ extension zone. That is the ultra low emission extension zone, which rides on the back of the climate con. There'll be a big court case and struggle there, because thousands of people have been refusing to pay. I've got a stack of papers from ULEZ that high. So, together, citizens, we can win, but free speech is totally fundamental to it all. And the watchword I would say, or watchwords, is resist, defy, do not comply. Resist, defy, do not comply. Resist, defy, do not comply.
Sounds like Diana
Thank
Ross.
you.
2 hours later, thank you.
Ladies, mate.
Thank you.
Steve, are you umpire then?
My ladder.
May I?
Brought your own ladder.
Oh, I need to go
Get off my ladder.
He's tall enough. May I book a slot,
Agree with him there.
Steve, may I book a slot? I want to tap out as a journalist for a while and do a little bit of philosophy. Can you hurry up and stop and take over?
Anyone but that.
Anyone but Durst.
I'll hold this for a sec.
Your hearing's too good.
Pardon?
I'm holding the camera now. Yeah, I'm holding the camera. Don't get triggered, guys. Raj is holding the camera.
Can we just
go back to too close.
Can we just keep the noise down a bit? We've got a wonderful speaker here. Can we just make sure we can all hear her, please? That's all right.
I'm very sorry that I didn't realise that was going on.
Whose microphone is that?
We have monthly Speakers Corner events. This is standing for women. And the reason I feel free speech is so important is because if we don't have people speaking freely, we don't know what is happening. And I only found out about the assault on our freedom to talk about women and what a woman is 2 years ago when this was
Oh, you're right, Abby?
Yeah. And I knew she's not a hateful bigot.
Yes, you can.
Before then, every time I heard about transphobia and the stuff that was said, I thought, oh, they must be right, they must be hateful bigots. And when Kelly J. King, who created Standing for Women, some people
Big up, Posey. Well done.
Anyway, she created the idea of this as a billboard, and she paid to have a billboard put up somewhere in the north of England, I remember, and it says woman, adult human female. That is the legal definition of what a woman is. And when I saw this, I remember thinking, oh no, that's a bit rude, because men who transition to transsexuals, it's not kind to say that they're not women, they think they're women. And I left it, I thought, I don't want to be unkind to people. And I didn't realise that what was happening was literally people are saying that women are not allowed to say what a woman is. A woman is an adult human female, you can only be a woman if you are born female. And you grow up and you're a woman. And the people who are saying that we're hateful to say that, you might think, oh, it's just unkindness. What it has led to is people, children of literally children at primary schools are being told that they have a gender identity and they might feel like they're a boy because they like boys.
Without their parents' consent or knowledge.
They might be a girl because they like girl things.
Why should they be talking about the genitalia in the first place?
Like regressive definitions. I grew up thinking we rejected these regressive ideas that if you like dolls or you like
action men.
Yeah, so if you like action men,
but enough about my private life.
If you like playing rough games, that's boyish, and you can't do that if you're a girl. And if you like playing dolls, oh, that's good.
Is it going to be able to hold 2 cameras, or should I give this to Pablo? Pablo, do you mind holding my... Unless I hold it, do you mind holding my camera when I go on for 5 minutes? Oh, sorry, when I go on for 5 minutes, do you mind holding my camera? Yeah, sure.
And you like playing with birds and things. It doesn't mean you're a gay boy or a feminine. No,
oh, yeah, you go.
you're actually a girl. And the reason
Hopefully the rain will stop.
children are being told this, they're grown enough to literally think that they were born in the wrong body. The reason this matters, they're being utilised. Yes, the reason this matters is that they're being told that the answer to their problem, that they're in the wrong body, is that they can take hormones, which will stop their body going through puberty. And I believe this nonsense. I thought, oh yes, that's fine. Because how awful to be in the wrong body and go through puberty and you're trapped. I didn't know because I wasn't allowed to hear this because people like Ovi were being condemned as right-wing, racist, whatever. What it means, when a child is put on puberty blockers, they are the BBC and everybody is saying, oh, they're reversible, you can just stop them. It's a lie. When children are put on puberty blockers, they tend to stay on
When did you become the arbiter of what people represent? Is it when you got your socialist kind of indoctrination? Not a conception then.
Sorry, no, can I?
What were you
I was at Bristol last Sunday. We had a speaker's corner event. The police let us down and looked into it. We were literally up like this. We've got a big event right at the corner. The police will actually uphold our lives.
Are you sure of that?
I said to the police officer at Bristol, why are they allowed to
Say who to
and he said, well, we have to let everybody have their free speech. So that is a case if people are wearing voice
You need to be like, you're free to be quiet.
to be heard, then that's been done. So, this Saturday, on Saturday, a lesbian feminist who has been fighting against violence against women for like 40 years had booked a library to do an event to speak to young women about how they can, be confident and not feel oppressed by male violence. I'm sorry, I don't know if you're male, but I'm sure you're not violent. She's not talking about trans rights. Nottingham City Council cancelled her booking.
Book it for Drag Queen Story Hour and send her in.
And the head of Nottingham City Council said this is due to the speaker's views on transgender rights being at odds with aspects of the council's diversity and inclusion strategy. And she also referred to their membership of Stonewall as being a reason why we can solve it. So I just want to say to you here, people being accused of transphobia, please don't accept it. Please actually look into it. Because once I started looking into it, I was so horrified to learn that I belonged to you.
Well done.
So I think that's it.
More women at Speaker's Corner.
Yes, hate speaker.
Raj, you need to assert yourself. Raj, you need to assert yourself.
I know what's
No, Raj.
Everyone. And I'm waiting for this. I'm waiting for the stuff to
Sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry.
You're part of the problem.
5 years ago, nearly 5 years ago,
Thank you.
Muslim was assaulted here at Speakers
That's going to be him.
by a man claiming to be a woman. I mean, she's like 55, she's like a type. So that was bad enough. It did go to court because there were videos. In terms of free speech, we don't have free speech.
Sorry, Muska, my brolly is dripping on you, mate. So you can come underneath if you like. You never say hello to me, do you? No, you always ignore me. No, sorry. Is it because I haven't got a cool beard? No, I was going to say that. I'm going to get it shaved off soon. So. It looks good. Keep it. Do you find things in it? Hey? Do you find things in it sometimes? Find things in what? In your beers? No, it's not long enough to find things in it. Like Raj's, eh? Yeah. Raj finds pizzas and everything.
Dust on my channel.
I found the Loch Ness Monster.
That's the one you probably put that's the one. I want to bring Raj. I got here late, so I missed out.
Yeah, look, he was later than me.
You're always late.
No, I'm not actually. I'm actually punctual. You're too early.
I got here at 11.
Yeah, I'm fashionably late. You know, I'm the star. Yeah, at least it's stopped raining. I'm actually happy.
Has it?
Yeah, a bit. Yeah, it's still dripping.
What happened? A guy kicked me up the office, and then he pushed me into an old lady, and the old lady fell on the railings.
Oh yes, God, you had beef footage. Sorry, Buster, I forgot to ask you about that. Yeah, you had beef footage, mate. Yes, that was horrendous. What happened?
But so,
are you injured?
No, I'm not injured because they couldn't. I'm obviously bigger than this person. They couldn't push me over. But I bumped into an old lady. She was right into the railing.
Yeah, I saw it. Yeah.
I don't know.
They were trying to blame you originally.
I don't know what happened to her when she injured or not.
I think she was alright.
But who blamed me? Where was this old?
No, after we were playing the video back, yeah, some people were reviewing and they said, oh, we couldn't see what's going on. It just looked like she got dropped to the ground, didn't it? And it looked like you dropped her. Yeah. As long as you reported it and clarify it.
That was some good footage, mate.
My wife.
Couldn't it be nice to be there?
So much for not engaging when they still attack me.
What you hear about transphobia, it's not transphobia, it's reality. Thank you very much. Sorry.
Okay, here's the annoying one now. Here he comes. Here he comes. This guy is.
Wow. 150 years of
I've been
free
coming like the
speech,
last
ladies
2
and
weeks.
gentlemen. That's something
I'll explain
the
why.
UK has to
Are you going to go back? I'm going to go after this guy.
and all the people that
When are you
come
going
here
up? I want to put you
to
after
speak,
this
and all
gentleman.
the people that come here to listen have contributed to the brilliance that represents free speech. And wherever you are in this world, on the internet, please go out to a space and create your own corner where free speech can happen and develop, and make sure
Some of us
that
are going for a drink
and make
in the mile
sure
for a head,
that when
so everyone is welcome
hey,
to join.
the heckler,
Except him!
what the heck
I'm only joking.
Bless him.
Carry on.
So yes, go out there today in your lives and make sure that you start a Speaker's Corner in your part of the world. But I want to say something about the police here. I want to say something that hasn't been mentioned yet about the police, which is they do a fantastic job, ladies and gentlemen. They do a fantastic job here under extreme pressure while
They are
they've been
incompetent.
defunded by the government.
They should
The
no
government
longer be called the
defunds our
police.
And when
They should be
the
called the football
make a
police.
mistake, you get a terrible little group here just jumping on it as if this is normality. It isn't. Most of the time, the police do a fantastic job here, and we should salute everything they've done, because without the police, this Speaker's Corner cannot happen. We need the police. They do a great job, and I salute them.
We're saluting the police because the police allow Muslim militants to abuse
They
and
made
attack
a
people
mistake,
every
and then we
single
get
week in the
people
park.
that abuse
and that is
people.
why
They can't let
cheering
a
them on.
wonderful organisation
Because this man
over
is an
150
apologist
years
for
actually
Islamist
do their
violence.
job.
He's
celebrated.
celebrated
And then we've got
an
a
attack
pseudo
against
atheist.
Hatton
You
Tack.
already spoke. Just let
He
it speak.
justified
And
an
yet we
attack
have
against Hatton
pseudo
Tack.
atheist Steve, who has organised this event, who is Tommy Robinson's
They have to
lieutenant. Who's Tommy Robinson's lieutenant, and he's pseudo atheist Steve's hero beats up police officers. And he, pseudo atheist Steve, has come to this park not to celebrate free speech, but to repress people
Does he believe in God?
not agree with.
Is he a pseudo-atheist?
Our hope has come to this park in the last 20 years to repress free speech in this park, and he's done it in his far-right glee under the orders of Tommy Robinson. And pseudo-atheist Steve has moaned, oh, it's now just the religious groups here.
Pop, everybody!
When in actual fact, pseudo-atheist Maybe Steve has been singularly
Right,
now, in fact,
this is about the anniversary
of the far right repressing free speech. And we've seen it with Bob the Destroyer. With Bob the Destroyer, every time he says the word Muslim, will you put the word Jew on top of that and then listen to how Bob the Destroyer really speaks in this park? So remember that. Every time you hear Bob the Destroyer say Muslim, put the word Jew and see how disgusting Bob the Destroyer truly is in this park. And I want to say just one more thing. Kyle, one of the great speakers in this park, couldn't make it today. But if he could, he would be here and to speak about how he has contributed also. So come to Speakers Corner, listen to all the views, and especially come to listen to Kyle, because he's one of the great speakers in this park. And I'd like to hand it over to our next speaker. Thank you very much for your time. My name is Dust. I come with a 2-year guarantee not to rust.
And a warning.
And I thank you very much. And you just saw a great example of repression of free speech just then on all your videos. Thank you.
Who's going to speak next?
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm going to start winning. Before you weren't even here. I've been here since 11. Yeah, that was.
I'm sorry, Steve asked.
I have to go as well sometimes.
I know. You don't.
Go on, make
Stand next to him so you can go up.
And I think Heiko's after, isn't it?
You want to speak for him? This is why Speakers Corner exists, not so that you can speak for him.
I haven't grabbed the platform. Don't make an argument about it.
So you still want to? Now he wants to tell me not to argue about it.
No, I thought I was next, so I gave him the privilege to go on. I apologize.
Anyway, listen.
It was my fault.
Listen, Speakers Corner should be about respect, right? It should be about listening to other people's views, even if you don't like them. My friend who just got up here disagree with a lot of what you said, but I don't disagree with you as a person. I agree with you about the police. I like the police.
Thank you.
I like the police, and I think they don't get paid enough for their job of risking their lives. But listen, we all need and desire respect in our lives. That's the bottom line, and that's what Speakers Corner existed for from the beginning, when the government was not only persecuting but hanging people on that tree over there.
You have to do it again.
By the thousands for treason, for speaking things that they didn't like. So, because I'm before you or after you, what does it matter? We need to respect one another and understand what true respect is, right? Now, for me, respect comes from inside. I know God respects me as a person. I know God created me as a person. So it doesn't matter what anybody else says about me. What matters for me is what God thinks of me. And I know He loves me. And I know He wants us to love one another. But how do you get that to happen? Right? How do you make someone love you? Impossible. If you made someone to love you, it'd be fake love. And that's what we fight against, all this artificial religion. A lot of times it's fake love because it's made up. It's on the outside, it's not on the inside. So we can respect one another and agree to disagree, can't we? Isn't that what Speakers Corner should be about?
Yeah, it was wrong.
When we try to shout someone down for speaking, when we wanted to go back to a respect to say, Mr. Speaker, I was here 29 years ago. First started preaching here, 29 years ago. And it was, Mr. Speaker, I have something to say. Respect, right? But you want that to go back to that today? I don't think so. It's not in people to have that kind of respect. So how do you expect people to treat you at a certain way which you feel is right? You know why you can't? Because everybody thinks they have a right today. Everybody's got their own right. No, I'm right. So nobody's wrong. Instead of respect. And the greatest respect is that God sent his son to die for our sins, to show us, to demonstrate his love for us. That if we accept him as our Savior, it will become something within, not something without. So thank you, that's all I wanted to say. But I do love Speaker's Corner, I love the opportunity. Listen, when I get shouted down, probably more than most of you, because of what I'm saying. When I get shouted down, listen, I gotta go with the flow. It doesn't bother me. Because I know what I'm saying is above and beyond that, and I respect even my persecutors. So it's gonna get worse. We have to adapt. Not let's get certain speakers in here so that everything will be better. It's respect from within. If you respect people, guess what's gonna happen? They're gonna respect you. And if not right away, eventually. So God's grace to you, thank you.
Am I after you, Michael, or is it somebody else? I'll go last because I want to be last. I have to go last because I came last. Hearing it?
I've been speaking at Speakers Corner since December 1985, and I came here and spoke just before going to France for a big protest movement there, and then I came back and started speaking here on a regular basis, pretty much every week for 37 years now, apart from when I was abroad. And one of the things I want to focus on is the people of Speakers Corner, and then I want to talk about the campaign over the last 2 years to defend Speakers Corner against state aggression and violence, which was used systematically against us over the last 2 years. I was in court even last Friday, I think just Friday past, accused of coming to Hyde Park, trying to speak on the 27th of December 2020. So these are two things we're going to cover. So the background, just a few anecdotal stories about people at Speakers Corner. I was here still when Lord Soper used to speak, as a friend over here was. He used to speak over here, and he had a tremendous oratorical style. He was almost like Shakespearean in his language. He had enormous vocabulary, an enormous ability to suddenly, you know, it's almost like moments of epiphany when someone's speaking, they say something, and it suddenly holds the whole crowd. And there was a time here, I think it was his 90th birthday, where he came and spoke here, and there were literally 500 or 600 people gathered in this part of the park listening to him give his oration. And I just posted a few days ago, you can find it on YouTube, there's a video from the 1950s, I think it is, or late 40s, of Lord Soper standing here and speaking. And again, it was that atmosphere that he was able to hold a crowd. During the war, famously, there was a guy called Leslie Jones used to sell pamphlets here about Speakers Corner in the underpass down there. And he wrote one about Lord Soper and Speakers Corner. And in there he said, there was one moment in 1940, I think it was 40, during the Blitz, and Lord Soper was speaking over there. A bomb was heard, so he said, hold on a minute. The crowd held. I shall carry on speaking. And so he carried on speaking right throughout the Blitz, and and he started speaking in 1926 at Tower Hill, and then came to Speakers Corner in 1940 first of all, and spoke from that time up until his death. I think it was 1998, if I remember right. I attended the funeral in his Methodist church. Now, there were other characters. One character I should mention immediately is a man who's just published a magnificent book on Ladbroke Grove and Notting Hill. His name is Ishmael Blagrove. He spoke here for 30 years and more at Speakers Corner. He's retired now from speaking. In fact, he's retired from all these type of activities. But they had a meeting in the Tabernacles in Notting Hill a few days ago. And there were hundreds and hundreds of people at this meeting from the entire community, the organisers of the Notting Hill Carnival, people who fought against the repression of people in the, what I think it's called Mangroves 9 or whatever it was, the squatters movement people, including people like Piers Corbett involved in that, Tony Allen and the countercultural movement, who also was a regular speaker for decades here, was the founder of modern comedy in Britain. And and Ishmael had association with the entire black community in London and to a large degree internationally. There was a guy I didn't even know about called Michael X. There was a guy called Roy Saw who used to speak, a tremendous speaker. He would hold a crowd again, be able to gather them, hold them. And these at Speaker's Corner are random crowds, passing people going through Hyde Park. If you can capture and hold the audience and bring the audience in, illustrate the way in which oratory works in real life. And that occasionally I've been able to do it, and you can, once you do it and you're motivated around the subject matter, you don't only have to do it in Speaker's Corner, you can do it in Leicester Square, on Trafalgar Square, anywhere where there's an open space. You can stand up, and if you appear to be moved in what you're saying, committed to what you're saying, and you're not purely mad, you will be able to gather a crowd. Don't forget, people talk about religious nutcases. Lord Soper was moved, as he believed, by the Spirit of God and the Spirit of Jesus. That's what motivated him. He was fanatical about this. That's what he spent his life promoting. And he believed that actually social justice and struggles to improve the rights of the people were an expression of the will of God. And he was an agent in that respect, temporarily on earth, fighting for those ideals. And he believed that Jesus, I remember hearing once, and there was a Ford workers' strike, and he started his meeting, or someone said, what about the strikers? And he goes, I believe the Ford workers are serving the purpose of Jesus, or something similar to that he was saying. Now, there was another guy mentioned in Ishmael's book, Maxwell. He's still alive, I see him sometimes around. But Maxwell was a huge, I was reading this book this morning, about Frontline by Ishmael Peligro. No, Maxwell, you know, black rights, always like being mouthy to people. Yeah, he knew everybody. He knew the Beatles, he knew Jimi Hendrix, all this. He was a music promoter. And he promoted black music within Britain. Played a big role in doing so. Marcus Garvey was a speaker in London, the black rights activist, the Return to Africa movement. There was the Indian Workers Association. There have always, when Lenin came to Speaker's Corner in 1902 and 3, he set out to learn English by watching the speakers speak. He was particularly enamoured by an Irish speaker who he would watch and tried to study. He knew English for in written form and writing, but he couldn't speak it. And he learned at Speaker's Corner, but he was also keen on the religious speakers. And he would go from church to church and watch the church speakers speak and the preachers speak, and the people heckle the preachers, which is a tradition that, of course, exists, as you've seen at Speaker's Corner today. It still exists. I disagree with those who think that this is some threat. When I first came to Speaker's Corner, there were a group of people, very vociferous group in the associated around the Monday Club, which was a Conservative Party sort of faction, and they trained themselves up at Speaker's Corner to heckle people. And initially I thought they're coming for me, attacking me. And after a few months I learned you just got to deal with it. And the way to deal with it is you take what they're giving, you know what they're coming with. You learn their lines and you repeat them back. And people started there. First of all, they used to say to me, are you a double act? Like me and Toad, there was a guy called Toad, you know. Oh, yes. Are you a double act, they said to me, or Matthew Palmer, you know. And they say, you're a double act, and you had to like bite the bullet, tolerate these people being there. They hated you, you hated them, but somehow as long as you held the thing together, you could still get your ideas across, still get your views across, still get your message across, and come back and feel confident the next week as well.
And the Socialist Party?
The Socialist Party of Great Britain had a guy called Harry, who used to speak here, And he was in Moscow in 1921 and saw Lenin and Trotsky at the, I think it was the Communist International Congress. He was in the Youth League then, I believe it was. And then he joined the Socialist Party of Great Britain, who did didactic work. He was a tremendous didactic speaker on the basic principles of philosophy and economics of Marxism. Now, you don't have to like what someone says, but Speaker's Corner, as Leslie Jones used to say, is the university of the people. Yes. And it allowed people to come to Speaker's Corner who have no knowledge, people who we used to call them tramps, now they call them homeless. Tramps used to come up here and they would argue, would stand next to multi-millionaires and argue about communism or Christianity or Islam. And so that was the tradition which I've experienced over the decades as I came here. Unfortunately for me, I was involved in a couple of Marxist groups. They all seemed to kick me out. And now they condemn me as a right-winger. So I'm a little bit weary about the labels people have used, because over the last couple of years, people have accused me, oh, I'm in association with Wilsey. I'm in association with the right wing, and so on. Why? Because we were opposing the single greatest act of international tyranny in history. The imposition of lockdowns and coronavirus dictatorships across the entire world on a lockstep basis, which appeared to us here in Hyde Park as the attempts by police and the de facto reality of the police closing down Hyde Park on and off for 2 years and arresting those of us. There were times when we just walked into the park and people were arrested just for walking into the park. And it wasn't anybody walking into the park, it was anybody entering the park who was a known face at Speaker's Corner. And the reason we were able to defeat them was because at the end of 3 anti-lockdown protests, we gathered here at Hyde Park. We agitated for people to defend Hyde Park. One occasion, the police were forced out in this direction. Another occasion, the police in open fields, just like in the 1850s, they had lined up about 150 police, making charges at us with their batons flying, grabbing small women, in particular small women, forcing them to the floor, handcuffing them, dragging them away, and we pushed them back out of the park on that occasion. The final occasion was last year on, I think it was the 24th of April. We came to Hyde Park and we drove them out, and there was a band playing here, Jam for Freedom. The police decided to close down the event here, and we drove them out of Hyde Park. First they came storming in. I remember Laura here, seeing the picture, turned around, pushed the bum against them, forced them back like that. And everyone was going, get out of the park, get out of the park. And there were surreal scenes, the most fantastic imagery by Wilsey, by Sam, by Jim and others, of these smoke bombs going off, and in and out, and the sound of the music still not playing, but the instruments have been turned into this weird, surreal sound, and it was like something out of a film, except better, because it wasn't a film. It was us maintaining and defending our basic rights at Speaker's Corner, and the right to speak, the right to discuss, the right to organise, the right to protest. Those moments last year were seminal moments in the fate of freedom of speech and the right to demonstrate in Britain. And unfortunately, those on the left who refuse to attend will forever be condemned for their lack of willingness to stand up for the rights of the people. These are the ways we achieved our rights here. They will be in future the ways we maintain our rights. And there are many new conflicts coming. Long live Speaker's Corner, ladies and gentlemen.
Yay! You could go, I don't know, do you want to come? We're going after it.
Are you going up?
I think this one's going after him. Okay. Then I'm after him. I'm the last one. Last one. We'd have to divert back to another pub like 10 miles down the road.
then run back here.
Right. So,
what's your name and where do you come from?
me? I'm sure half of you know me. My name is Wilsey. I come from North London. And I'd like to just say before I start that for this speech I am tapping out as a journalist. Laura has tapped in and Laura is taking over for the moment now. I want to speak. So I've taken off my journalist hat. 150 years ago marks a great time in British history. When the government of Queen Victoria decided that it wanted to infringe upon the right of free speech of the English people fought back. As we've heard from speakers here, they tore up the railings of this park. They fought pitched battles with police, and they fought for their right to free speech, their blood right, their birthright. They did not simply wait to put a mark on a piece of paper. They took what was theirs by right. They had the courage to claim what they were owed. Freedom of speech is not just some nicety of a civilized society. It is the basis of it. For our society to flourish, and for any people, anywhere to prosper, for civilization and normality itself to exist, there are universal laws of nature which each of us must shelter under. It's no coincidence that natural law grants natural rights, for it's entirely a matter of right and wrong. Whether to respect your fellow man and to withhold from using violence against him, or whether to treat him as prey. Such rights include the right to speak freely, the right to associate freely or disassociate, to have your privacy, the right to trade and do enterprise, to make something and sell it freely without imposition, to defend yourself and those you care about, and from that our right to bear arms by which to defend ourselves, to put us on a level playing field against any aggressors. Such rights to life, to liberty and property are no great ask. To simply be left alone, for those around you simply not to attack you, and to forsake any unprovoked violence. Yet, where do we stand now in relation to those rights? We now live in a country where people are being locked up in a cell, where people are being taken away from their friends, from their family, from their employment, for speaking. We now live in a country which systematically robs people of their bodily integrity, which coerces them into medical treatments. Or let's talk about the widespread genital mutilation of young boys, which I've got to admire some of the activists here for speaking about. This is the only place in the country you'll hear about it. It's widespread. Tens of thousands a year. We now live in a country where peaceful protest is violently crushed, as Dr. Koo has talked about, and the pitched battles fought over there, just to go outside your house. We now live in a country where people are locked up for owning herbs, for deciding to take the drugs that they choose as adults of their own free volition to take. We are robbed of sovereignty over our own consciousness, that we cannot take what drugs we choose to amend our own experience, where despite there being no victim and therefore no crime, these people are treated as criminals. And yet how many millions of people in this country smoke weed or pop a pill or snort a line of coke? Well, we know all of those lot in Parliament are doing it, don't we?
It's the real
But
truth.
I guess it's one rule for them and another rule for us. We now live in a country where the state covers up the systematic rape of children when they published their report into the rape gangs in Telford and Rotherham, which, by the way, the police were complicit in. The local councils were
Pakistani
complicit.
grooming gang.
The social workers were complicit. The government decided that the British public shouldn't know all of the information. They shouldn't know the background of the perpetrators. Well, why not? This is a report paid for with our money, yet the government's telling us that we can't see it. We now live in a country where the government takes closer to half of every pound earned, where they rob from each and every one of us through our pay packets. We now live in a country where courts care more about what's said in the media than they do about matters of law. I remember when I started Resistance GB, the first thing I did was I went to report on the Simon Dolan case. And you know what the judge said? I think he was the Chief Justice of England and Wales or something pretentious like that. He started talking about, you know, what we've seen in the Times newspaper. What is this? Is this some sort of democracy? Is this some sort of republic? Is it a constitutional monarchy where we have fundamental rights? Or is it ruled by Times newspaper? We now live in a country where the government either invites or smuggles in hundreds of thousands of people each year. The people being smuggled, and this is state people smuggling, across Dover are just the minority. And the government is systematically trying to replace the native population of this country. And even worse, and this is the kicker, we now live in a society where the government systematically indoctrinates children to extinguish the values of our society, to extinguish the values of free speech, of self-defense, of free trade, of free association. And it now seems that they have almost completely, in the youth, eradicated the very basis of this country, let alone this small corner of it. And I can talk because I have experience of this. When I was a teaching assistant, when I worked in the state system in education, do you know how few children could even tell you where Wales was or whether it was part of the United Kingdom? I remember I once taught a year 5 class, these are children 10 or 11, and half the kids couldn't spell England. Half the kids couldn't spell England. And you might say, oh, well maybe this is some sort of misguided attempt at, you know, trying to do their jobs but failing. I can tell you they don't give a toss for any of these children. There was this one time I was working with a young lad and he had some mental health conditions, some special educational needs, as we call them. And he was about 7 years old. And he used to run out the classroom and he said, no, you can't stop him from running out the classroom, just follow him round, just watch. I'm like, okay, if he gets into trouble, I guess I'll step in. And they sort of A year 6 boy had climbed onto the roof of the bike shed. So below it was paved concrete. They were happy for this year 6 boy, maybe he was, what, 12 years old or something like that, to be up this high. And bear in mind I'm on a step ladder, so it's that high. And then this 7-year-old decided he wanted to do the same thing. Now I'm not sure whether any of you have seen a 7-year-old, but they regularly run into things at different points and they trip over and they fall over their bumps and scrapes and whatnot. This 7-year-old started climbing up these bike sheds. I mean, this high up, concrete slabs underneath. What I went, what? Nope. Picked him up, put him down. I then got called into the headmistress's office and told that the school had a no-touch policy. Or I've simply responded that the school had a dead child policy. And then they sacked me. Well, this is the thing. The schools want to talk on and cart on about safeguarding. You've got to safeguard the children. From what? You know, falling down and smashing their skulls on a patch of concrete? Well, no, of course, that's not important. No, the thing we've got to safeguard the children from is their own history, their own culture, values that will teach them to respect others. That's what this mal-education system is about. It's not an education system.
They do it at Eton.
It's indoctrination.
They do it at Eton.
And what we've seen is we've seen a long march through the institutions. We've seen the complete takeover of all of the British institutions by a radical, zealous, neo-communist element. This is best put by Professor or Doctor now, I think it is, David Starkey, when he talked about his time on the teacher training board. It took him a very long time to get in, and when he got in, he found that every single person on there was a communist. All of the people training the people who are meant to educate your children, your brothers, sisters, cousins, are communists. They are totalitarians. They want to wipe out, stomp out any form of dissent, to teach them to live in fear and hatred of themselves, and not to respect others, but to use violence against others. And this is, it's fundamentally dangerous. I mean, there's a series of books that I'd recommend to you. I was really happy to see Peter Whittle here, who helped sponsor the Long March Through the Institutions. I want to mention Mark Sidwell and his work on that. I want to talk about Dr. Sean Gabb and his work Radical Coup. And I want to talk about Lord Hewitt, who's talked about the replacement of votes in Parliament with just diktats issued by secretaries of state, where putting a tick in a box doesn't really do anything. It no longer matters, does it? Let's be honest. The electoral system's bankrupt. Do we really change anything? And we've also been conned, I want to say, into this idea, and this is what's being taught to the kids, and maybe it was taught to many of you, that the only thing that matters is votes. Well, if I had the choice between having a vote and having my rights, I choose rights. I choose my right to speak. I choose my right to live my life. I choose my right to do what I wish with my money, to associate freely and be uninterrupted. What's the point in being given a piece of paper that I put a tick on and changes precisely nothing, and which somehow legitimizes this corrupt government? There are limits within which government must abide. There are limits on this tyranny of the majority, and it must be stopped. I mean, really, what's the point in speaking here? When I've talked about all of this, when I've talked about the complete erosion of all of our culture, even Toby Young mentioned it.
I'm here.
What's the point? What's the point on holding a piece of ground that's going to be swept away by the incoming tide? As one of the prior speakers said, free speech is not just when it's comfortable, not just when it's easy, but it's at the margins. It's when you're being offensive. It's when you're saying something that needs saying, that needs to be said because no one else is saying it. So what do we have to do? We don't just need to defend Speaker's Corner. We need to defend every single inch of this country. We must defend every inch of Britain for free speech. Speaker's Corner should not simply be here, but it should be everywhere. And we can't rest on our laurels. We can't sit back on Twitter like, you know, the Toby Youngs of this world. You know, we can't have our free speech union, but then kick out journalists when they ask public interest questions to politicians. And we can't continue condemning people and failing to defend them just because we disagree with what they say. We must stand up and we must fight. And frankly, not enough people bear scars on their wrists How many people got up here and spoke when the government said don't do it? When Metropolitan Police and TSG thugs were beating the crap out of us, how many people got up here and said no? Because I can tell you, if enough people stand up and say no, if enough people do not merely wait to be given what is theirs by blood and birthright, but simply claim it, then there is nothing that this corrupt and criminal government can do. So we must fight, and we must also remember to return to our traditions. We must remember that there's no point in speaking into a vacuum whilst your children are being brainwashed. Stop giving your children to other people to raise. 150 years ago, if you were a carpenter, then your son would be trained as a carpenter. You would be his teacher. Or maybe your brother would be his teacher. Or maybe your best friend and next door neighbour would be his teacher. The idea that we should give our children to strangers we don't know to raise them. I mean, really, how long do you actually get with your children? How long?
Not enough.
What? You see them for an hour in the morning, which is more like 10 minutes over breakfast where you're telling them to eat their Cheerios. And they come back home, they're watching telly, maybe you try and spend half an hour with them and then you're telling them to go to bed. Who's spending more time with your children?
The television.
You? Hollywood? Or these indoctrinators in the government? Who's raising your children? You know, we can all stand here and pontificate as much as we like. We can stand here and talk, or we can actually choose to embody the change that we want. So it's important, yeah, we've got to defend Speakers Corner, but we've got to defend the whole of England. And we've got to make sure there's a new generation to take up the cause. Because at some point, we're all going to be gone. Some of us sooner than others. Yes. And frankly, as one of the people with the fewest grey hairs around here, I don't want to be left as the last guy standing. I'm not having it. I'm not having it. You need to take up the cause, and you need to fight, and you need to pass on the cause.
Well done.
And you need to be willing to risk everything. Not just speak and say, oh, I care about free speech, oh, I'm going to put out a tweet when it's convenient. You either believe in free speech or you don't. And the reason I'm here is because my great-grandfather, this was his favourite place in the entire country. And he went through a world war so that I could have freedom. Ask yourselves, if millions of people went through a world war, if millions of people died so you could simply speak, what is not worth doing to defend that which has been passed on to you? Thank you very much, ladies.
Okay.
Very much, Will.
Thank you.
Any hecklers?
No. I'm the last one.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, they're all gone.
You've ruined all the fun.
They all went to the pub.
Okay.
All the hecklers went, this is rubbish.
All right, fine. You got Sunday for that. Okay, I'll keep this short. Obviously, I came last, so I'm going to have to go last. Like I normally come last. So I do want to say that, okay, you got one other dude. So I want to say that, you know, when it comes to Speakers Corner, a lot of people don't realise I used to come here regularly from 2017 until 2020, named by Raj, Speakers Corner, infamous in the streets of Speakers Corner, unfortunately. For me, I didn't know about Speakers Corner until around 2015. I did watch a movie called Omen 3 once, and Damien was walking through it, and they had the evangelical Christians predicting that the Antichrist was going to come, and I think that was an omen there. And so I saw it, but I didn't realise it was Speakers Corner. It was only till 2015 I started watching. I was like, wow, this place is like such an amazing place. And I've lived in London my whole life, and you know, I've never really come down or even knew about it apart from that movie. So when I come down in 2017, yeah, I kind of got the Speakers Corner's bug. And there's a lot of things that I love about Speakers Corner. Some of the best people I've met, some of the most interesting conversations, some of the most controversial things I've spoken about. And I've learned a lot as well. But I have to say, while I say the good stuff, I'm going to have to say the bad stuff as well, because Speakers Corner is going downhill. If we cherish free speech in this country, one place that, you know, should be allowed to kind of like retain it, it's gonna be here. This is like a barometer of how strong free speech is. Now, you saw earlier with Dust. I don't like Dust. Dust, you're an annoying little prick here, no offense to you, yeah? But he has a right to talk. And also, what was shown today is people have a right to walk off, right? So you're walking into a place that you know that's going to offend you, and you stand there being offended and then cry like a little bitch, and then you run around crying. You saw what Steve did. He didn't like what Dust was saying. He didn't attack him, he walked off. Yeah? That is one way to deal with it. You going into this place and getting upset, yeah, is absolutely insane. You know what's in there, you're not on the road. So a couple of weeks ago, I haven't been there for like a year. I came back 2 or 3 weeks ago, and an elderly gentleman called Uncle Asif. I don't agree with Uncle Asif, but he's a 65-year-old man. And there's a lot of very young thugs around him, pushing him, grabbing his hair, and you know, because they don't know what he's saying. So I've jumped in the middle, and they pushed me about like a freaking ragdoll. Now, I can take it, yeah? I'm obviously the Rajanator, whatever you want to call me. I can take it. But this old man could have been pushed to the floor. And the thing is, the police, you are disgraceful. Let me say to you, you're disgraceful. Because when I watched that video back, I didn't realize the police were a couple of meters behind us, watching us being pushed about, and just standing in like freaking what? Like gnomes. I don't know what's the point of you being there if you don't do nothing, yeah? And you're watching for 10 minutes as an elderly gentleman is being pushed about. Now, for me personally, yeah, that situation for me was kind of minor. I've been in much worse, and I will be in much worse in the future at some point. But for an elderly gentleman to be pushed about and the police do nothing is disgraceful. We also know about the situation yesterday with Hattoon. I disagree with Hattoon wholeheartedly with what she's doing. I think it's counterproductive in some ways. But the police to arrest her when somebody else had stolen their property shows you how incompetent the police is. Now, we're under the time when I used to come here, people are going to say, oh, there's fights, I got escorted out by, I can't remember how many policemen, and I had like 100 people kind of shouting, get me out, get me out. And I remember that day, it was the greatest day of my life, yeah? I loved it, yeah? The more you say you hate me, the more I love it. When someone says, we hate Raj, you're giving me energy. I kind of got boosted up with that for years after that. I got that energy. But the point is this, even though things used to happen before, Steve Barnes, as much as you annoyed me during that time, you know, a lot of times I used to curse you behind your back, sometimes in front of your face. But one thing I always knew about Steve Barnes, he loved Speaker's Corner. He loved the place, and he actually wanted the place to be what it is, which is a productive place where we can have conversations without it turning into kind of like a silly kind of school playground. The police, as of today, don't care about Speaker's Corner. They do not care. In fact, I believe, and I'm going to say it straight here, they want the park to close. They want the park to go into such a disarray that somebody is going to get hurt or killed, and then they're going to have to close the park down. Because I saw it with my own eyes. With my own eyes, 2 weeks ago, an old man was being pushed about, and I had to be the policeman. Me. Now, if I got hurt, yeah, then what? The point is this, I should not be the policeman in the park, even though I can be. I could be judge, jury, and execution if you want me to be, yeah? Metaphorically, let's just say that, it's not in really, but in reality, I could be.
I mean, there is some self-policing that's necessary.
You have to, but what I realised, when I then looked back at the camera, I realised that, I'll get to take a question in a minute, I realised at the back, a couple of metres away, the police were there, just standing there like this. And they can see a whole crowd moving with 2 people in the middle, being pushed for 10 minutes. And they did nothing. Now, this isn't the first time that I've seen the police be incompetent, but for me personally, the police are the problem. You're gonna have thugs and idiots walking in who don't understand. You're walking in today, you can walk out if you get upset. It's like me, I'm a Sikh, I get offended all the time when I see flat earthers, yeah? They annoy me, yeah? But I talk to them, and then if I don't like what they're saying, I walk off, right? They offend me. I was one time down, I used to be a vegan at one point. I'm a vegetarian, I do animal cruelty artwork. A woman ate a steak in front of me. Yeah, I stood there for 5 minutes. When I started feeling offended, I walked off. You understand? I didn't eat it, yeah, I walked off. And this is the point. You are not on the road.
So you're not a stakeholder?
No, I'm not a stakeholder. The point is, you're not on the road. When you walk into this space, you know what's gonna be there.
It's like my great friend Hassan Yilmaz, and I'm going to go very, very kind of dark here. He said walking into Speaker's Corner and getting offended is like walking into a gay porn theatre and then say you don't like gay porn and then screaming, right? Why would you put yourself through this? Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Never been there before.
Yeah, but the point is, it's unbelievable that you have people in the 21st century who know what this place is about and they go to get offended. Yeah. And when they see something that's offensive, they're screaming and spazzing out that they got offended. Yeah, I mean, it's something that I can't fathom. Now, I hope, you know, with the police listening to this, they don't really care what I say, but whatever. The point is, I'm going to say it. You're a disgrace, yeah? For the last couple of weeks. Now, big up to the police overall. They're doing a very hard job, and I appreciate what they're doing. I've been to the States, and I know the police over there are like a military army. So when I come back, I was like kind of appreciative of the police, how they handle things here. But in this park, they're a disgrace, yeah? And they need to be called out for what they are. They're incompetent at best, or they're malicious at worst, meaning that they want to get the park closed. Now, I would prefer them to be incompetent because then at least I know they're just stupid, yeah, and not good at their job. If they're malicious, then this is something insidious and it should be stamped out. Now, I would love to talk to the people that have taken control over Steve Barnes, but I can't seem to find the guy. He's like, you know, I don't know what it is. You know, like
he was here. He was here.
He was here earlier, was he? Yeah. Okay, he's gone now. Okay, so no one can really talk to the guy. So I want to keep it to what it is. I thanks for everyone staying behind. And if you do have any questions, you know, big up to Speaker's Corner. And I'm saying this today because if you want Speaker's Corner to be around in 150 years' time, yeah, again, which it won't be in the state it is now, you have to speak the truth when things are going wrong and also when things are going good. This place will not even be open in a year if the way it is being treated at the moment and the way the police is policing this. It will be closed, and I believe that's what the police want. Okay. Any questions, anyone?
I would like to ask. I do agree with you that I think the police are trying to close this place. Yeah. I do think that they are malicious. Yeah. I think they're violent. I think they're thugs. Okay. But you're talking about not wanting to police park yourself. Yeah. Aren't you just giving in to this concept of them having authority over us? If you say, oh well, we can't police ourselves, maybe we should go back to the Pelian principle of what the police was founded on, that the police are the people and the people are the police, and that all these people are there to do is be versions of ourselves who are paid full time to do what is each our civic duty and to step in ourselves. Maybe we should take it upon ourselves to be the police, and maybe this is an entire cultural thing across this country that we need to learn to be adults and police ourselves. Just like I was talking in my speech, we need to learn to raise our children ourselves. It's no big ask, you know, everyone knows how the birds and the bees work, okay? People get married, they have kids, and yet they're not raising them, okay? People go out in the society, they complain about crime, but they're not doing anything.
Some of the best moments have been when there have been literally ructions going on, and a few of us just jump in, pull the people apart, and then
can I clarify my position on this though? I have no issue being the policeman. I love it. Yeah, but give me a truncheon, some handcuffs, and I cannot be arrested for it. Yeah, and nothing like that, nothing dodgy like that. Give me the power to do it, and I'll go in there every week, and I'll be truncheoning and freaking getting everyone out that I need to.
You have the power. You have the power.
I have the power up to a point.
You have the, no, you have the
I
power
cannot break the law. I cannot break the law.
But the law states that we each have the power to arrest. Where there's a breach of the peace, right? Where there's a danger of imminent harm to people or property, we have the right, each individually, to step in and say no.
Yeah, so, I agree. I mean, I try my best, but I'm saying that...
I can understand if what your concern is that you have this right, but if you step in, the police are going to come and they're going to attack you. Or the courts will pick you up for doing what is your right.
We know in this park... The saddest thing is that sometimes we should have been arresting the police here.
We know in this park here, the police in this park are incompetent. They will arrest the individual because they have a policy of the path of least resistance. And I was told this, meaning that they would rather, say if there's 100 people and there's one person, the one person may be right and 100 wrong, but in order to resolve the issue, they will get rid of the one, yeah, because it's easier. And so if they have that policy, what they're going to do, even if you do try and tackle situations,
They will see you as the aggressor if there's more than them. And this is why you have a situation now where the mob is ruling. Because the police are too scared to actually deal with the problem. Rather, what would they want to do? They'll put their head in the stand and say, this is the easiest way out. And we've seen it time and time again. It's happened to me. I was surrounded there a couple of years ago, and instead of removing those guys who were threatening to beat me up, I was escorted out the park, yeah? Obviously with a VIP treatment and a van as well, thank you very much. But the point is, I should not be the one to have moved out. They should have got rid of them. Now, I'll need to go because we got people over waiting for us. I don't drink, so we have to that. I will say that, look, like I said, I think it was a perfect example from Steve today. If you don't like what someone's saying, you can just walk out, right? No one's putting a gun to your head to come in here. If they are, you need to tell me, yeah? Because if someone's putting a gun to you to come in here, then there's no reason why you stay here when you're getting offended, yeah? You can walk away. We saw a perfect example. Somebody that Steve doesn't like was saying something about him. He didn't like it, and he's like, okay, I'm going.
Well, he was down at the pub already.
It doesn't matter. The point is, no one's being forced to stand in Speaker's Corner. We have the right to move, which is one of the best things about being in a secular Western democracy, if you want to call that. Obviously there's faults in it as well. And so we need to understand that if we want Speaker's Corner to carry on, we can't be walking around like this is some sort of playground where the mob rules and thuggery is celebrated, and anybody that tries to speak out again is vilified or seen as the problem. And the police are the problem, and a lot of people know I'm a big supporter of the police. But on this occasion, when it comes to Speaker's Corner, down to the police. Anyway.
So you might say the police are the problem and the problem is the police.
Yeah.
The 3 Ps.
Yeah.
Sorry,
We're just playing the police.
So, what can we do in terms of writing to our MPs, to doing whatever, to put this right? Because it's so pernicious that it's damaging to the police, it's damaging to public respect of the police. So what can we actually
I'll be honest,
do?
I don't have no let's just say any kind of I don't vote anymore. It's been two elections I haven't voted. I used to be a Labour Party member at one point. I stopped. I think all the parties are the same. Most of the MPs are just shallow. They don't really give a shit. So I don't think anything's going to happen if you go to your MP. What you need to do is to do what you need to do, is to turn up and not be scared, right? You turn up and you say, no, I'm not letting you bully me. I'm not letting you push me about. I'm not letting you take over the park. We're going to stay here, and even if you don't like what I'm going to say, you're going to listen to it or you leave. Yeah, no one's forcing you to stay here. So it takes individuals. Even one person can make a difference. Yeah, it doesn't take an MP to do anything. They can't do nothing anyway. What you need to do, people that really cherish free speech, they need to walk into here and go, okay, although I disagree with what this person's doing, don't touch them, right? Don't attack them. You don't even have to speak yourself. You can just kind of put yourself in the middle like I did the other day. I don't agree with Uncle Asif. I think it's a bit crazy, to be honest with you, but I'm not having an old man being pushed about.
Yeah, I think I was at the Bristol Free Speech last, and I was literally having to use my flagpole to hold back men who were trying to push in. But we're also writing to the Police and Crime Commissioner, we're writing to the police to say, you did not protect our rights, and I think we do have to do, we have to follow.
I'm not saying not to contact,
but they don't protect our rights.
Yeah, I'm not saying don't contact the MPs, but don't expect too much from them.
No, they're never going to.
You can contact as much as you want. So even like I mean, I know councillors, I've known MPs in the past, and I know they're trying their best, a lot of them. But in reality, when it comes to stuff like this, Speaker's Corner of free speech, they're not going to put their head above the parapet. You understand? People are too scared. This is why this world is run by. This is why any country can be taken over. Because most people are just sheeps. They're too scared to say the truth. They'd rather have their cushy little life walking about. I don't want anyone to think I'm a racist. I don't want anyone to think I'm an Islamophobe. I don't want to think anyone to think I'm anti-Semitic or whatever, anti-LGBTQ, like what you're saying here about transgender. They would rather keep that under wraps because they know putting your head above the parapet is difficult. Yeah, I've experienced it. I mean, I've been doxxed, I've had people threatening me, I've had people trying to attack me and all that kind of stuff. And it's not hard, it's very hard to do, but there are people out there that can do it. And if you can do it, try your best. Now, I'm going to try and come to Speaker's Corner a bit more. I know you're celebrating everybody, they missed me, but I don't want to come. But if I'm feeling that the place is going downhill and I'm going to come in and sort of, intervene when I need to, then I'll turn up, right? And then you're going to cry that I've turned up, but you're causing a problem. You're making me come back. Yeah? I'm not the boogeyman. You call me enough times here, like the Candyman 3 times, I'm going to turn up, right? And then you're going to be upset afterwards that I'm here. You're going to get PTSD. I still meet people today who got PTSD from 4 years ago that I said something to them. You know, people need to grow up here and realise that, look, this place is going to be a place. I've been called so many things under the sun. I mean, I've lost count of the amount of offensive things I heard. But at the end of the day, whether I like it or not, this place has been here for 150 years. I want to keep it for another 150 years. Anyway, thanks everybody, and take care, man. Woo! Oh yeah. I'm actually an artist, actually. So I do free speech artwork as well. There you go.
Friends, my name's Julian Meek and I'm an interfaith minister and minister of Stratford Unitarians. And my claim to fame here is that I used to speak some years ago. I first came to Speakers Corner. Believe it or not, I'm 70 next birthday. I'm not quite 150. But I came to Speakers Corner first of all in the 60s when I was a child. Now at that time I had a speech difficulty called dysphasia. And so the fact that I'm speaking today quite coherently and clearly is a miracle. Now I want to say that I didn't go to university. I was barred from there because of other things. And Speakers Corner became my university. And I found it the open platform which is mentioned in the historical record. And the idea of that was to encourage people, perhaps people who are nervous, people who don't think they've got anything to say it. And we were very successful. And I think there's a bit of a nostalgia. I know in the 60s there was Soper and there was the Catholic preacher and other people like Robert, who was probably the professional speaker. They used to slip him £5 to speak. He only ever had a small crowd, but what he said was coherent and clear. So there is a rich tradition of both people who are quite eloquent and professional, like Heiko and other people, and there's other people who are amateurs. But let me tell you the story. Don't forget, the professionals built the Titanic and the amateurs built the Ark. So even if you are an amateur speaker, come and have a go. Keep the tradition, keep the freedom of speech or public assembly, as somebody quite said. That was Barry's son, who was a tremendous speaker in his own right. And there are characters. A few years ago we had a thing at Bishopsgate Institute, and it was initiated by Tower Hamlets Council, I think, and the schools there. So there are young people interested in public speaking. And I suppose the emphasis really, the decline of public speaking to some extent is social media, but also the requirements to pass exams, to do everything in the written form, whether it's computers or otherwise, instead of the old tradition of many traditions of religious speaking, whether it's Christianity or whether it's Islam or Buddhism. It was passed down from generation to generation. Somebody mentioned, Wills I think mentioned that if you were a carpenter, you passed the trade on. Public speaking and telling stories is part of this rich tradition. And there is hope, because in our church we promoted somebody called Raymond Antrobus, who is a spoken word poet. He's getting quite a reputation, but he first appeared in the East End in our church, among other places, and there's a rich tradition now of spoken word. So that is being enhanced. And I think, as other speakers have said, it's everybody's responsibility. I'm optimistic, never mind about the cynics and the skeptics. And even if Extinction Rebellion are right, about only 5 years left for us, let's grasp let's grasp, those who are able, a attitude of hope that we will evolve and not only be able to express ourselves individually, but come to a awareness as a total humanity, that we can settle our differences and meet our needs without the recourse to war and violence. Nobody has mentioned Ukraine and Yemen and Syria and all the things that are happening. Our friend here mentioned children. I haven't got children, I'm gay. I never wanted children, but there are enough children in the world. We are not a shrinking population, but they're not being loved, are they? They're not being loved in Yemen, in Syria, in southern Sudan, or even in the United States, because they still allow kids to get slaughtered by people who shouldn't really have the power to shoot a weapon. But you can't just blame the individuals. If we spend collectively more resources on things that destroy life, all these weapons that are going to Iran, how many millions are they costing? How many scientific hours in engineering are they costing? Millions. And yet we can't feed the whole population. Even in this country, people are queuing up for food banks when our supermarkets are full of food because of the cost of it. There is something fundamentally wrong with the way we organise our society. And whatever system you have, and I'm not advocating one or the other politically, I just want to pass the message of hope that eventually, it may be 1,000 years, that our relatives will get to a point in our evolutionary cycle that we will be able to sustain life, to make sure that everybody has got enough to live on in terms of food and shelter and other material, and not solve our problems by weapons of mass destruction or even a knife. We must get to a point that we can settle our differences in a peaceful way, irrespective of who we are, in terms of our experience, our gender, our ethnic group.
Finish.
I will. So that's my message, one of hope. Is everybody's responsibility. Even though we are a small space relatively in terms of the whole planet, I think we can hold that candle. We can hold that hope that we are our ancestors, we evolved to a better world. It may take 1,000 years, but the first step is now. Thank you. I'll be here sometime. I intend to come back to recreate the open platform, to improve the standard, to compete with Heiko and others, to improve the standard of public speaking in this place. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hi, I need to talk. So, thank you for giving me this opportunity. I'm a visitor here in UK and I'm glad to be here. And it's interesting to see why you need a place like Speaker's Corner to have freedom of speech. You should have the entire country for yourself, for freedom of speech. For heaven's sake, if there is any change that you can get in your constitution, it has to be, to exercise your freedom to speak publicly. And I also want to take this opportunity to condemn what happened to Hatun yesterday. The way she was dragged, I just saw it on video. I was here earlier, but I was not here during the incident. But what happened to her was totally disgraceful, and I want to condemn this on camera. Thank you.
Thank you. Well done. Anyway, man, it's all done. Yeah, it was disgraceful yesterday.
Yes.
Even if you don't agree with the Hatun, So even if she, even if she was offended, she didn't commit any crime in terms of breaking the law. So how the police can arrest someone and forcibly remove them, even though there's no crime? It's the reason behind it. I don't know whether somebody accused her or something. Do you think?
She was actually charged.
I mean, they, from what I understand, is someone took her property, then someone accused her of doing something. So the police, instead of finding out what happened, they just said, look, you're going to leave, and then you're arrested, and you're arrested. So it's a disgraceful situation. So is this right? Oh, really?
Having you and to have so many
they don't even ask questions. Like, they want to find out what's going on. Before you arrest someone, find out what's going on here. Okay, what happened here? They just come in and arrested someone. It's unacceptable, whether you agree with Anthony or not. It's unacceptable. You know, I don't really agree with Anthony the way he does stuff. Like, she shouldn't be sort of, you know, like, everyone has to live with the law. You know, oh, India, okay, alright. They're from Punjab. Yeah, because I was from the north. Where were you from? Is that in the south? What part is that? Oh, South East. Oh, okay, you're like more. Is it near to Goa?
No, it's on the other. That's more on.
Isn't it near Sri Lanka? Yeah, near Sri Lanka, basically. Yeah. She's on the. That's on the that side, and then obviously we've got Sri Lanka. Yeah, I need to. Everyone keeps saying that. I need to 100%. I just haven't got the time at the moment. Anyway, man, take care. Shall we shoot? Right, where are we gonna go?
Hope you enjoyed that. I've got a few comments to make actually. I'm not sure if I should make it now or live stream later, but I thought the biggest load of gobbledygook spoken today was by ex-PC Steve Barnes, who first outlined that he was a druid and then immediately said that the fake climate agenda is real. I did see a few people saying call him out. There was no need to call him out. Not really a heckle, but we can analyse it a bit later.
So you was offended?
And then also he said something completely ignorant, which was because of the plastics in the sea, people are getting cancer. Well, cancer is an autoimmune issue. So when your immune system is down and doesn't have the vitamins and minerals to defeat any foreign bodies in your body, that's what happens. So I'm glad he said in the same breath he was a druid, and then he was all about climate change, because it kind of, to me, outlined the issue I always had. And the other thing was, he said, policing is not easy at SpeakersCorner. That's because you're not really policing, or you didn't really police. If you just took out the people or banned the people that were causing the issues, there wouldn't be any issues at SpeakersCorner. Steve Barnes is crap.
We did have government.
So anyway, I may do a review.
The whole thing about.
I also didn't really appreciate Steve and some of the others just walking off halfway through the speeches. Well, that was quite.
That by definition.
How shall we say?
But we didn't have even.
You're here for speeches and you organise speeches, then you would say, come on everybody, let's go to the pub. So I won't be going to the pub to do the team. I think Raj is.
I don't want pub to it.
The Marlborough. Biggest thing down there.
Come on, don't be like that.
So that's my view of it. Raj, Steve, obviously going to SpeakersCorner.
He must have been ejaculating all over the place.
I do think speech. I thought we'll see from TV. Actually, the very good speech. Let's watch. Steve's speech was very good. I just did
very much part of my life.
Steve Barnes' speech. I thought that was crap. I'll have to listen to it. Sorry, Steve. Alright, want to say a few words?
I just want to say, look,
if she said something out of retirement, don't do it, man. You're not going to like it. You're going to get PTSD afterwards. You're going to be crying for 10 years. I still meet people at Speakers Corner. I heard you said this to me 75 years ago. I was like, what? Oh, you don't remember? No, I don't remember because all of you lot are irrelevant to me. Yeah, I meet loads of people all the time. So don't make me come out of retirement. The police, yeah, you want me to police the police? I'll come back. Yeah? But don't cry when I start going all Rogeling emoji. Yeah.
Shut your mouth and pay the jizya.
Yeah, oh no, I'm not paying that.
Alright guys, see you later.